A black car stops at the corner. Inside, a man in dark glasses turns down the radio. He's just heard something that made him break suddenly. A voice he knows all too well. Because it's his own. Axl Rose has just found someone singing his own songs in the middle of the street, and what's about to happen will change that young man's life forever. Let's go back a few hours. The sun beats down hard on the Los Angeles asphalt. On some random corner of Hollywood Boulevard, a 23-year-old kid is standing with an old acoustic guitar and a portable amplifier that sounds tinny. His name is Danny. Long hair, worn black t-shirt, ripped jeans. Not for fashion, out of necessity. He's been living in his car for 3 months. A 97 Civic that doesn't start well anymore. He sleeps there, eats what he can, and sings. Because it's the only thing he knows how to do. Danny didn't choose the street chose him. He came to Los Angeles with the dream that thousands bring. He wanted to be a musician. He wanted to fill stadiums. He wanted his voice to matter. But the city spits you out fast if you don't have connections, if you don't have money, if you don't have luck. And Danny had none of that. He only had a guitar and a voice that people ignored as they rushed past on their way to their offices, to their important lives, to their problems more urgent than listening to a kid sing on the street. But today something is different. Danny is singing with more force than ever, with more rage, with more soul. Because last night he thought about giving up. He thought about calling his mother and telling her she was right, that he should have stayed in Phoenix, that he should have studied something useful, that dreams don't pay rent. But this morning he looked at himself in the mirror of a gas station bathroom and told himself no, that he had one more try left, one more day, one more song, and he chose one that always saved him. One he sang when he was a teenager and the world seemed impossible. He opens his mouth and begins. The first notes come out with that characteristic rasp, that controlled scream, that mixture of pain and power that defines rock. People keep passing by. Some turn around. Most don't. Danny closes his eyes. He's not singing for them anymore. He sings for himself. He sings to remind himself why he came this far. His voice bounces off the building walls, climbs through the windows, slips between the noise of the cars, and reaches that black car that just turned the corner. The driver slows down, takes off his glasses, and listens, really listens, because what's coming out of that kid's mouth on the street isn't a simple imitation. It's interpretation, it's feeling, it's technique and soul mixed in a way he recognizes. Because he did it first, 30 years ago, on another stage, with another life. Axl Rose parks the car half a block away, gets out, walks slowly, stands behind a group of tourists who stop to record with their phones. Nobody recognizes him. He's wearing a cap. He has a beard. He's spent years hiding from cameras, but now he doesn't care. He just wants to listen. Danny is in the climax of the song, that part where the voice has to rise, where it has to break, where it has to bleed. And he does it. He does it perfectly. When he finishes, there's a brief silence, then lukewarm applause. 3 or 4 people throw coins into the guitar case. Danny smiles tiredly, thanks them, bends down to pick up the coins. $4.50, enough for a sandwich, maybe 2 if he finds a deal. When he looks up, there's a man standing in front of him. Cap, beard, dark glasses. Something about his posture feels familiar, but he can't place it. The man speaks, hoarse voice, straight to the point. I heard you from over there. He points to the car. You sing well. Danny smiles uncomfortably. Thanks, man. Means a lot. The man doesn't move, keeps looking at him. You sing very well, but you're not singing to sing. You're singing to survive. You can tell. Danny looks down, doesn't know what to answer. It's true. It's absolutely true. And having someone see it disarms him. The man sits on the edge of the curb. At the same level, Danny does the same. How long have you been here? 3 months. Living in my car. The man nods. I slept in a bus station. For months. Before everything exploded. Danny looks at him confused. Before what exploded, the man takes off his glasses. and Danny feels the ground disappear under his feet. It can't be. It can't be real. Axl Rose is sitting next to him, on the curb, like it's nothing, like this is normal. Danny stutters. I was singing your... The man raises a hand. I know. That's why I stopped. Because you weren't singing my song. You were singing it as yours, and that's rare. That almost never happens. People sing to copy, you sang to feel. And that's the difference between a musician and someone who knows how to play. Danny can't process what's happening. His idol, his reference, the man whose voice he tried to imitate 1,000 times, is there, talking to him, telling him things he needed to hear. Axl takes out his phone. Give me your number. Danny gives it to him, trembling. In 3 days, there's an audition for opening acts on a small tour, tribute bands, covers, that kind of thing. It's not guns, but it's a stage. It's a start. You're going. It's not a question. It's an order. Danny feels like he's going to cry. Can't speak. Just nods. Axl gets up, dusts off his jeans. Listen to me carefully. This isn't a miracle. This isn't luck. This is because you have talent, and because you didn't give up. If you had stopped singing yesterday, I would have passed by today and nothing would have happened. But you were here. That's what matters. Being here when it has to happen. He puts on his glasses again, starts walking toward his car. Danny calls out to him, Axl, why are you doing this? The man stops, turns around. Because someone did it for me, a long time ago. And because music isn't about reaching the top and closing the door, it's about leaving the door open for the next person. He gets in the car, starts it, drives away. Danny stands there, standing, with his guitar in one hand and his phone in the other. People keep passing by. The noise is still the same, but something changed. Everything changed. In 10 minutes, his life turned 180 degrees. Not because he got a contact, not because someone famous gave him an opportunity, but because someone saw him, really saw him, and reminded him why it's worth continuing. That night, Danny doesn't sleep in his car. He gets a borrowed couch from a friend, takes a shower, eats hot food, and practices. Practices until his fingers hurt, until his voice breaks. Because now he has a date, he has a goal, he has a concrete reason to get up tomorrow. 3 days later, he's at the audition venue, a small theater in the valley. There are 30 musicians waiting. All good, all hungry, all with similar stories. Danny goes in when they call him, goes up on stage. The lights blind him. There are 3 people at the judges' table. He doesn't recognize any of them. They ask him to sing. He chooses the same song, the one he sang on the street. Because that song already brought him luck once, he closes his eyes and sings, with everything, with rage, with pain, with hope, with every ounce of his being. When he finishes, he opens his eyes. The judges look at each other. One of them speaks. We were told you came recommended, but they didn't tell us you sang like this. You're in. Danny feels his legs trembling. Thank you. Thank you very much. The man smiles. Don't thank us. Thank whoever sent you. 6 months later, Danny is on a real tour. It's not Madison Square Garden. It's clubs, big bars, medium-sized theaters, but they're real stages, with real audiences, with lights and sound, and the feeling that this is real. His name starts to get around, small, slowly, but it's getting around. He gets a manager, records an EP. Social media starts following him. It's not fame, not yet, but it's movement. It's progress. It's life. One night after a show in San Diego, someone knocks on his dressing room door. Danny opens it. It's him again. Cap, beard, discreet smile. I came to see what you did with the opportunity. Danny hugs him. Without asking, without thinking, just hugs. Thank you. Thank you for believing in me when nobody else did. Axl pulls away. I didn't believe in you. You already believed in yourself. I just reminded you to do it out loud. They stay talking for an hour. About music, about the industry, about how hard it is to stay real when everything pushes you to be a product. Axl gives him advice. Not from arrogance, from experience, from scars. He talks about the mistakes he made, about the doors he closed, about the people he lost along the way. I don't want you to repeat my mistakes. I want you to make your own, but make them knowing there's a way out. Before leaving, he gives him something, a folded paper. Danny opens it when he's alone. It's lyrics, handwritten, with crossouts, with corrections, with life. A note at the end says, I wrote this when I was your age. Never used it. Maybe you'll know what to do with it. Or maybe not. But it's yours now. Make it matter. Danny reads the lyrics. It's raw, it's honest, it's perfect. He sits down with his guitar, starts putting music to it. The notes flow on their own, as if the song already existed and was just waiting to come out. He records it that same night, on his phone. Dirty, raw, real. He uploads it to his social media without thinking much about it, without expectations. Just because he feels he has to do it. The next morning he has 50,000 plays. In a week, 2 million. In a month he's signing with an independent label. The song becomes a small anthem for people who struggle, for those who sleep in their cars, for those who sing on the streets hoping someone will listen. It becomes a bridge between generations, between old rock and new, between the legend and the one starting out. 2 years later, Danny is opening for a big band, a massive stage, 20,000 people, lights that seem from another planet, first-class equipment, everything he dreamed of. He finishes his set. People applaud, shout his name. He comes down from the stage trembling with adrenaline, and there he is again. Backstage, looking at him with that smile that says everything without saying anything. You made it. Danny shakes his head. I'm making it. This is just beginning. Axl laughs. That's the right answer. The day you think you've arrived is the day you start to fall. Danny looks at him seriously. I need to ask you something. Why me? That day there were hundreds of musicians on the streets of Los Angeles. Why did you stop for me? Axl takes his time to answer. Because I heard something that's not heard much anymore. Real desperation. Not the pose, not the character. Real desperation. And that desperation becomes two things. It destroys you or it transforms you. I bet you were one of those who transforms. And I was right. Danny feels a lump in his throat. And if you hadn't stopped that day, Axl shrugs. Someone else would have stopped. Or not. Maybe you would have found another path. Or maybe not. We don't know. But the important thing is that when it happened, you were ready. And that's the only thing we can control. Being ready when it happens. The conversation hangs in the air. Danny returns to his dressing room, looks at himself in the mirror. He's no longer the kid who slept in a Civic. He's no longer the one who sang for coins. But he's still the one who sings with desperation, with hunger, with the certainty that each song can be the last or the one that changes everything. And he's never going to lose that. Years later, in an interview, they ask him what was the moment that defined his career. Danny smiles, tells the story. The corner of Hollywood Boulevard, the black car, the man in the cap, the audition, everything. The interviewer asks if he's still in contact with Axl. Danny nods. From time to time, messages, short calls. We're not friends, we're something weirder. We're two people who cross paths at the exact moment. And that creates a bond that doesn't need constant maintenance. It just exists. The story goes viral. People share it, romanticize it, turn it into legend. Some say it's a lie, that it's publicity, that it's made up. Danny doesn't bother to clarify, because for him it's real, and that's all that matters. The truth doesn't need defense. The truth simply is. Today, Danny has 3 albums, 2 world tours, international recognition, economic stability. But what he values most is something else. It's the ability to see other musicians on the street and stop. It's signing copies of his albums for kids who have that hungry look. It's answering messages from strangers who tell him his music saved them. Because he knows what it's like to need someone to see you. And now he's the one who sees. The lesson isn't that you need a legend to discover you to succeed. The lesson is that you need to be there when whatever has to happen happens. Because talent without consistency is just wasted potential. And consistency without passion is just empty stubbornness. But when you combine talent with consistency, with passion, with real desperation, when you don't give up the day before the miracle, that's when things change. Danny keeps singing with the same intensity as that day on the street, even though now it's in stadiums, even though now they pay him, even though now people know his name. Because he learned that you don't sing to arrive. You sing because it's the only thing you know how to do. And if you arrive, it's a bonus. But if you don't arrive and you keep singing, then you really understood what this is all about. Danny's story isn't unique. There are thousands like him, singing on corners, waiting, believing, falling, getting up. The difference is that he had a moment of grace, a crossroads, an opportunity disguised as coincidence. But he also had the courage not to waste it, not to self-sabotage, not to believe he didn't deserve it. And that's the part nobody tells you. That when the opportunity comes, most people let it pass. Out of fear, out of insecurity, out of imposter syndrome. Danny could have said no to the audition. He could have thought he wasn't ready. He could have frozen on stage, but he didn't. Because when someone opens a door for you, the only thing you have to do is walk through it. The rest is figured out by walking. Today, somewhere in Los Angeles, there's a kid singing on a corner. Maybe with talent, maybe without it, maybe about to give up, maybe one day away from a miracle. We don't know who it is. We don't know if they'll make it, but we know that if they're still there tomorrow, they have more chances than if they give up today. And that's already something. That's already everything. Music isn't about being the best. It's about being the one who doesn't give up. The one who sings even though nobody listens. The one who practices even though nobody applauds. The one who believes even though everyone doubts. And when enough of those days come together, when enough hours of practice accumulate, when enough pain transforms into art, that's when something magical can happen. The story of Danny and Axl is that. It's magic disguised as coincidence. It's preparation meeting opportunity. It's talent being recognized by someone who knows how to recognize it. But above all, it's a reminder that we never know who's listening to us. We never know what song will change our life. We never know which is the last day before everything gets better. That's why we continue. That's why we sing. That's why we create. Because somewhere there's someone who needs to hear what we have to say. And at some point that someone will be in the right place, and so will we. And when that happens, when it finally happens, it has to find us ready. It has to find us alive. It has to find us singing. Danny keeps singing. In studios, on stages, at home. Because now he knows that every song is a bet. Every note is a declaration. Every word is a bridge between who you are and who you could be. And he's not going to stop building bridges. Because someone once crossed one to reach him, and now it's his turn to do the same for others. The guitar he used on the street he still has, hanging in his studio. He doesn't play it, just looks at it. It reminds him where he came from. It reminds him that success isn't a destination. It's a constant reminder that you can lose it all again if you stop being who you were when you got it. Danny won't forget, can't forget, because the day he forgets is the day he stops being real. And being real is the only thing that matters. In a world of auto-tune and playback and studied poses, being real is the most revolutionary thing you can do. Danny learned it on a curb, from the mouth of the man who defined a generation, and now he teaches it to every kid who approaches him after a show, to every musician who sends him a demo, to every dreamer who still believes it's possible. He tells them the same thing Axl told him. This isn't luck, this is work. This is not giving up when everything tells you to give up. This is singing even though nobody listens, until someone listens, and when someone listens, being ready for that to change your life, but not change your soul. And you? Are you singing your song even though nobody listens? Are you one day away from a miracle, or did you give up yesterday? Tell me your story in the comments. And if this moves something inside you, subscribe. Because there are more stories like this, of people who didn't give up, and the next one could be yours. The legendary Axl Rose, walking unnoticed through the streets of Los Angeles, observes a young musician who is about to change his life forever. What happens in the next few minutes defies everything you thought you knew about rock stars. Stay until the end, because this encounter took a turn that nobody saw coming. It was a typical Friday on the Santa Monica Boulevard. The afternoon sun cast long shadows on the pavement, while hundreds of people walked hurriedly, absorbed in their phones or conversations. Among the crowd, sitting on a corner near the pier entrance, was Lucas Martinez, a 23-year-old young man with a worn acoustic guitar resting on his knees. His open case in front of him contained barely a few $1 bills and some coins that gleamed faintly under the evening light. Lucas had been playing on that same corner for months. Every day was a constant struggle to capture the attention of passers-by who rushed by at full speed, too busy to stop and listen. But Lucas didn't play out of desperate need. He played because music was the only thing keeping him alive after having lost everything. 6 months ago, he had quit his job at a corporate office, fed up with the monotony and falseness of the environment. His family didn't understand him, his friends abandoned him, and his girlfriend of 5 years left him, telling him he was wasting his life. Now, with barely enough to pay for a shared room in a rundown apartment, Lucas clung to his guitar as if it were his last link to hope. That afternoon, he began playing an acoustic version of Patience by Guns N' Roses. His voice, though without professional training, had a raw and honest quality that occasionally made some pedestrians stop briefly before continuing on their way. What Lucas didn't know was that, among the crowd, someone was watching him with unusual attention. A man of medium height, with a black baseball cap pulled down to his eyebrows, dark sunglasses, and a worn denim jacket, had stopped a few meters away. His hands were buried in his jean pockets, and his posture was relaxed, almost invisible among the constant flow of people. The man listened attentively while Lucas finished the song. There was brief applause from a group of passing tourists, and one of them dropped a $5 bill into the case. Lucas smiled shyly, thanked with a nod, and took a sip of water from a half-empty bottle he had beside him. Then, to Lucas's surprise, the man with the cap approached. His steps were confident but not threatening. He stopped in front of Lucas and stood there, observing him in silence for a moment that seemed eternal. "Do you play here a lot?" asked the man with a rough but curious voice. Lucas looked up, squinting against the sun's glare filtering behind the stranger's figure. "Every day," he responded cautiously. "It's my office." The man nodded slowly, as if evaluating the answer. "How long have you been playing?" "Since I was 12, said Lucas, relaxing a bit at the stranger's friendly tone. "But professionally, well, this is as professional as I've been." The man let out a brief, almost ironic laugh. "Professional," he repeated. "Most people don't understand what that means in music." Lucas didn't know how to respond. There was something about this man's presence that made him feel uncomfortable but also intrigued. The stranger crouched down to Lucas's level, resting one knee on the ground. From that position, he looked directly at the guitar. "It's a Martin," observed the man, pointing at the instrument. "A D28, if I'm not mistaken. A bit beaten up, but it has good sound." Lucas blinked, surprised. Not many people could identify a guitar model just by looking at it. "Yes, it was my grandfather's. He left it to me when he died." The man nodded with respect. "The best guitars always have a story." There was a pause before he added, "You played Patience a while ago. It wasn't bad." "Thanks," said Lucas, not knowing whether to take it as a compliment or veiled criticism. "It's one of my favorites." "Mine too," responded the man with a barely perceptible smile. "But you play it like you're asking permission." "That song isn't for asking permission. It's for demanding to be heard." Lucas frowned, processing the words. Before he could respond, the man stood up and pointed at the guitar. "Will you let me try?" Lucas hesitated. His guitar was the most precious thing he had, but something in the stranger's tone made him nod. Carefully, he handed over the instrument. The man took the guitar with an almost ritual reverence, adjusting the strap over his shoulder as if he had done it millions of times before. And then he began to play. The first chords were soft, almost experimental, but then something changed. The guitar seemed to come alive in his hands, each note flowing with a precision and emotion that left Lucas completely paralyzed. The man played an extended version of Patience, but it wasn't simply a repetition. It was a reinterpretation, a conversation between the musician and the instrument that captured the song's essence in a way Lucas had never heard before. The crowd began to stop. First there were 2 people, then 5, then 10. Within minutes, a semicircle had formed around them. People took out their phones, recording the moment, murmuring to each other with expressions of amazement. Lucas watched everything in disbelief. Who was this guy? How could he make a guitar sound like that? When the song ended, there was a brief silence, followed by deafening applause. The man returned the guitar to Lucas with a modest smile. "Thanks," he said simply. "That was incredible," Lucas managed to say, still processing what he had just witnessed. "Who are you?" The man took off his sunglasses, revealing penetrating eyes that seemed to have lived 1,000 lives. "Someone who also started on the streets," he responded enigmatically. Before Lucas could ask more, a middle-aged woman in the crowd shouted, "Oh my God, it's Axl Rose!" The murmur became a frenzy. People began approaching, shouting, asking for autographs and photos. Lucas felt the world move in slow motion. Axl Rose, the Axl Rose, the rock legend. He had been playing his guitar. Axl raised a hand, trying to calm the crowd. Calm down," he said with a tired but genuine smile. He looked at Lucas and gestured for him to come closer. "Come on." Lucas got up, still dazed, following Axl as he made his way through the people. A black vehicle with tinted windows stopped by the curb, and a burly man in a suit quickly got out, opening the back door. "Get in," said Axl, pointing to the interior of the car. Lucas hesitated. "What? Why?" "Because we need to talk," Axl responded simply, "and we can't do it here." With his heart beating a mile a minute, Lucas got in the vehicle. Axl entered behind him, and the car started smoothly, leaving behind the crowd that continued shouting and taking photos. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with what you think will happen. You won't regret it. Inside the car, the silence was almost deafening. Lucas looked out the window, watching the city pass in a blur of lights and shadows. Finally, he dared to speak. "Why did you bring me here?" Axl leaned back in his seat, taking off his cap and running a hand through his hair. "Because I saw something in you," he said bluntly. "Something most people don't have. Passion, honesty. But I also saw something else. Fear." Lucas swallowed. "I'm not afraid." "You're lying," said Axl with an ironic smile. "You're afraid of yourself, afraid of failing, afraid of succeeding, afraid that if you really try to be what you want to be, life will kick you again." The words hit Lucas like a punch to the stomach. "How do you know that?" "Because I went through the same thing," responded Axl, his tone becoming more serious. "When I was your age, I was on the streets of Los Angeles, sleeping in rehearsal studios, eating whatever I could find. People told me I'd never get anywhere, that I was a dreamer, that I should get a real job." Lucas listened in silence, hanging on every word. "But here's the difference," Axl continued. "I decided that I wasn't going to let fear define me. I decided I was going to fail 1,000 times if necessary, but I was never going to stop trying. And you, Lucas, have to make that same decision." "How do you know my name?" Lucas asked, surprised. Axl pointed to the guitar case that Lucas had brought with him. On the inside of the lid, written in permanent marker, was his name. "Pay attention to details," Axl said with a smile. The car stopped in front of a discreet building in a quieter part of the city. Axl got out first, followed by Lucas, who looked around suspiciously. "Where are we?" "At a recording studio," Axl responded. "One I use from time to time. Come on, I want to show you something." They entered the building, passing through a small lobby until they reached a heavy steel door. Axl opened it, revealing a fully equipped recording studio. The walls were covered with acoustic panels, and in the center of the room was a drum kit, several amplifiers, microphones, and a mixing console that looked like it came from a spaceship. "This is yours for the next 2 hours," said Axl, pointing to the space. "I want you to record something, whatever you want. An original song, a cover, whatever. But it has to be something that comes from your soul, not from your head." Lucas was overwhelmed. "I don't understand. Why are you doing this?" Axl leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. "Because someone did something similar for me many years ago. A guy named Danny, who let me use his studio when I didn't have a penny. He told me that if I ever made it to something, I had to do the same for someone else. And here we are. Lucas felt a lump in his throat. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything, Axl responded. Just play. And when you're done, we'll talk. With that, Axl left the recording room, leaving Lucas alone with his thoughts and his guitar. Lucas looked around, still processing everything that had happened in the last 30 minutes. Slowly, he sat in a chair in front of a microphone, tuned his guitar, and closed his eyes. For the first time in months, he felt something he had forgotten: hope. He began playing a melody he had been composing in his head for weeks, but had never dared to finish. The notes flowed naturally, each chord building on the previous one, creating a musical narrative that told his story. The loss, the struggle, the doubt, but also the determination to keep going. On the other side of the glass, in the control room, Axl listened in silence. Beside him was the studio's sound engineer, an older man with decades of experience in the industry. He has potential, murmured the engineer, adjusting the levels on the console. Axl nodded without taking his eyes off Lucas. More than that, he has something that can't be taught. He has truth. When Lucas finished playing, there was a heavy silence in the air. He slowly opened his eyes, as if waking from a dream. Axl entered the recording room again, with a serious but satisfied expression. That was honest, said Axl. That was real. Now let me ask you something. Do you want to keep playing on the streets, or do you want to try something bigger? Lucas looked at him fixedly. I want to try, but I don't know how. Axl pulled a card from his pocket and handed it to him. This is my manager's contact. Tell him I sent you. He'll help you get some contacts, some gigs at small bars to start. I won't lie to you, it's going to be hard. You're going to fail more than you'll succeed. But if you keep showing what I saw today, you have a chance. Lucas took the card with trembling hands. I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me yet, said Axl with a smile. Thank me when you're playing on a stage in front of thousands of people. Until then, prove I wasn't wrong. They left the studio together. Outside, the sun had completely set, and the city glowed with the lights of night. Axl shook Lucas's hand firmly. One last thing, he said. Never let anyone tell you your dream is too big. Dreams aren't too big. People are too small. With that, Axl got into the black car waiting for him and disappeared into the night. Lucas stood on the sidewalk, looking at the card in his hand as if it were an invaluable treasure. That night, back in his small room, Lucas couldn't sleep. He spent hours staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the day in his mind. It seemed like a dream, but the card on his nightstand was proof that it had all been real. The next morning, Lucas called the number on the card. A professional voice answered on the second ring. Tom Harrison's office. Hello, said Lucas, his voice hesitant. My name is Lucas Martinez. Axl Rose told me to call you. There was a brief pause. Ah, yes. Axl told me about you. Can you come to the office tomorrow at 10? Lucas felt his heart race. Yes, of course. Perfect. I'll send you the address by message. Bring your guitar. The call ended, and Lucas stared at his phone in shock. This was really happening. The following months were a whirlwind. Tom Harrison turned out to be an experienced manager who had worked with dozens of emerging artists. He didn't promise Lucas anything, but he gave him something more valuable: an opportunity. He got Lucas a series of performances at local bars and cafes, small places where he could perfect his art in front of real audiences. At first, it was difficult. There were nights when there were barely 5 people in the audience. There were moments when Lucas questioned if he was doing the right thing. But every time he felt like giving up, he remembered Axl's words. Dreams aren't too big, people are too small. Gradually, things began to change. The crowds grew. People started sharing videos of his performances on social media. A local music blog wrote a glowing review about one of his original songs. And then, 6 months after that encounter in Santa Monica, something unexpected happened. Lucas received a call from Tom. I have news, said the manager with an excited tone. An independent label wants to meet with you. They're interested in recording an EP. Lucas felt his legs weaken. Really? Really? And there's more. Axl asked if you want to open for him at a private show next month. It's a small event, only about 300 people, but they're all industry figures. Lucas couldn't believe what he was hearing. Yes, yes, of course. On the day of the show, Lucas was more nervous than he had been in his entire life. He arrived at the venue 2 hours early, with his guitar and a mixture of excitement and terror running through his veins. Axl was there, checking the sound equipment. "You got here early," said Axl with a smile. "That's good. It means you care." "I'm terrified," Lucas admitted. "That's good too," Axl responded. "Fear means this really matters to you. Use it. Channel it into your music." That night, Lucas went on stage in front of an audience of producers, label executives, musicians, and critics. His heart was beating so hard he thought everyone could hear it. But when he started playing, something changed. Fear transformed into energy. Doubt became determination. He played 4 songs, all originals, all coming from the deepest part of his soul. When he finished, the applause was genuine and prolonged. As he came off stage, Axl was waiting with a proud smile. "You did it," said Axl, shaking his hand. "Now the rest is up to you." Lucas nodded, knowing this was only the beginning of a long and difficult journey. But for the first time in years, he felt he was on the right path. If you made it this far and want to keep seeing inspiring stories like this, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. Before continuing, what you're about to hear is disturbing. This content is for educational and entertainment purposes only. What follows is based on public statements, archived interviews, and testimonies from people close to Axl Rose during the peak of Guns N' Roses, the band that dominated the rock world in the late 80 seconds and early 90 seconds. The day Axl Rose broke his silence, nobody saw it coming. It wasn't in a planned interview, it wasn't in an authorized documentary. It was in a live stream from his house in Malibu, unfiltered, without managers, without a script. Just him, a camera, and a half-finished bottle of whiskey. For almost 2 hours, he spoke non-stop. And what he said left the rock world paralyzed. "I've carried this for over 30 years, he began. "And if I don't say it now, I'm going to take it to my grave. But I don't want to die with this inside anymore." Axl Rose leaned back on the black leather couch. He wore a worn cap, dark glasses, and a sleeveless t-shirt. He looked tired, but not defeated. There was something in his gaze, something that had been hidden for decades behind the stage fury, behind the scandals, behind the image of the uncontrollable rock star. He started talking about 1991, the year Guns N' Roses released the albums Use Your Illusion I and II. Double albums, massive tours, magazine covers, million-dollar contracts. The world was at their feet. "We were untouchable," he said. "We had total control, or so we thought." It was then when he received a call from a record label executive, someone Axl preferred not to name directly, but whose initials he dropped several times during the broadcast. They told him there was an exclusive meeting at a private mansion on the outskirts of Los Angeles. It wasn't a common party, it was a power meeting where covers, contracts, and careers were decided. "They told me that if I wanted to stay relevant, I had to go," Axl recalled. "That the people who really moved the industry were there, the ones who decided who rose and who disappeared." He arrived one October night, accompanied only by his driver. The mansion was hidden behind a hill, surrounded by trees and without signs. At the entrance, 2 men in black suits were waiting for him. They took his phone, asked him to sign a confidentiality agreement, and handed him a silver mask. "All guests must wear it," they told him. "It's part of the ritual." Axl entered, and what he saw immediately disconcerted him. There were legendary musicians, movie actors, Hollywood producers, all with masks, all in silence. The music was low, almost hypnotic. There were candles in every corner and a strange smell in the air, like incense mixed with something chemical. "I didn't feel welcome," Axl confessed. "I felt watched, as if I was being evaluated." A tall man, dressed in a black robe, approached him and extended his hand. "Welcome, Axl. It was about time you joined the family." Axl didn't recognize the voice immediately, but later found out who it was: a producer with decades of influence. Someone who had worked with iconic bands and had connections at all levels of the industry. They took him to an interior room. There was a long table, covered with a dark red tablecloth. Around it sat about 15 people, all with masks, all motionless, In the center of the table was something covered with a black cloth. The man in the robe spoke. Tonight is about loyalty, about demonstrating that you're willing to cross lines to stay at the top, because greatness is not for the weak. Axl felt a knot in his stomach. I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't leave. I felt that if I did, everything I had built would crumble. Then they uncovered what was in the center of the table. It was a human skull, or at least it seemed so. It was decorated with embedded stones and engraved symbols. "This represents sacrifice," the man said. "The sacrifice of the old to be reborn in the new. Whoever kisses this skull will be blessed with eternal success." One by one, the guests stood up and did it. Axl watched in horror as figures he admired, people he had listened to on the radio all his life, knelt and kissed that object without hesitation. When his turn came, he froze. "I couldn't do it," Axl said with a broken voice. "I stood up and said no, that I hadn't come for that my music didn't need rituals to be real." The silence in the room was crushing. The man in the robe approached slowly. "Are you sure, Axl? Because once you reject this, there's no going back." The doors close. Axl nodded. "I'm sure." He left that mansion that same night. He never spoke again with anyone who was there. And from that moment on, everything changed. The following weeks were strange. Axl noticed that his manager started acting different, more distant, more evasive. The interviews he had scheduled were canceled without explanation. The contracts that were almost signed remained up in the air. "Nobody told me anything directly," he explained, "but something had changed. It was as if I had been marked." One day, one of his guitarists, someone he trusted, confessed something to him in private. "Axl, there are rumors. They say you rejected something important, that you didn't follow the rules. And that has consequences." Axl asked what kind of consequences. The guitarist only said, "Your name doesn't sound the same in the offices anymore. Now you're a risk." That was the first time Axl understood that it wasn't just about music. It was about control, about loyalty to a system that operated in the shadows. They don't fire you. They don't publicly cancel you. They simply stop opening doors for you. They isolate you until you become irrelevant. During the following months, Axl began to notice patterns. Bands that used to respect him now avoided him. Producers who wanted to work with him suddenly had other projects. Even some of his own bandmates began to distance themselves. "I felt betrayed," he admitted. "But worse than that, I felt alone. Because I knew that if I spoke, nobody would believe me. And if someone believed me, they would also be marked." Axl revealed that he tried to move forward as if nothing had happened. He composed new songs, planned tours, gave interviews, but something inside him had broken. "I wasn't the same. The rage I used to use to create now consumed me. I became paranoid, explosive, and the world thought I had simply gone crazy." He started drinking more, fighting with everyone, canceling shows without apparent reason. The press said I was a diva, that I was unstable, but nobody asked why. Nobody wanted to know what had happened to me. One day, in the middle of a tour in Europe, Axl had a breakdown. He was in his dressing room, alone, looking at himself in the mirror. "I saw a stranger. I didn't recognize myself. And in that moment, I knew that if I continued like this, I was going to die not physically, but inside." He decided to withdraw. He didn't announce an official retirement. He simply stopped appearing. He stopped doing interviews, stopped getting on stages. He took refuge in his house, surrounded by few trusted people. "I needed to heal. I needed to understand what had happened to me and why it affected me so much." Years passed. Guns N' Roses continued to exist, but without the same energy. Axl came out from time to time, played some shows, but he was no longer the same. People thought I had lost the passion, but it wasn't that. I had lost my innocence. During that time, Axl began to investigate. He spoke with veteran musicians, with people who had been in the industry since the 60 seconds and 70 seconds. And they all told him the same thing, that what he had experienced wasn't an isolated case, that those meetings had existed for decades, that many of rock's legends had gone through the same thing. Some accepted and became legends. Others rejected and were erased from history. And a few, like me, remained in limbo, neither inside nor outside. Axl mentioned that he even had contact with the family of a deceased musician, someone who had spoken publicly about industry control before dying. They told me he tried to warn others, that he left recorded messages, lost interviews, but nobody took him seriously until it was too late. It was then that Axl decided that someday he would speak, that he wasn't going to die with that secret. But I was afraid of what could happen, afraid they would call me crazy, afraid nobody would believe me. And so he lived for years, silent, watching from afar as the industry kept functioning the same, seeing how new generations of artists fell into the same traps, seeing how the system remained intact until today. Axl explained that what motivated him to speak was seeing other artists begin to break the silence. I saw young musicians talking about abusive contracts, manipulation, control, and I realized that if I didn't speak now, I was being complicit. He said that for years he carried the guilt of having stayed silent. I thought about all those who came after me, about those who maybe went to those meetings because nobody warned them, and I wondered if I could have prevented that. If you've made it this far and want to keep discovering stories nobody else tells, subscribe to the channel. But he also clarified that he doesn't regret having rejected what they asked of him. I could have had more success. I could have been bigger, but I would have lost my soul in the process. And I prefer to be a fallen rock star than a puppet at the top. Axl spoke about how that night at the mansion changed him forever. It didn't just destroy my career. It destroyed my trust in people, in the industry, in everything I believed was real. He revealed that for years he had nightmares, that he saw those silver masks in his dreams, that he heard the voice of the man in the robe telling him, "There's no going back." I would wake up sweating, feeling like I had made a mistake, but then I realized that the mistake would have been staying. He also spoke about how it affected his personal relationships. I couldn't trust anyone. Every time someone approached me, I thought they were part of the system, that they were watching me. I became a hermit. His closest friends told him to seek help, to go to therapy. And I did. But how do you explain to a therapist that you rejected a pact in a secret mansion, and that's why your career collapsed? It sounds like madness. Axl said what hurt him most was seeing how some of his own bandmates distanced themselves. Not because they hated me, but because they were afraid of being associated with me. Because they knew I was a problem now. One of them told him privately, "Axl, I can't be around you. It's not personal, but I have a family, I have contracts. I can't risk it." That broke me, he confessed, because I realized that the system was stronger than any friendship, than any loyalty. Axl also revealed that he tried to talk to journalists on several occasions. I told them what had happened. Some listened attentively, but in the end, none published anything. They told me they needed more proof, that it was too dangerous, that it could ruin their careers. That's when I understood it wasn't just me, it was everyone. Everyone was afraid. For years, Axl took refuge in music, but in a different way. I no longer composed for the masses. I composed for myself, to heal, to understand. He wrote dozens of songs that never saw the light. They were too personal, too raw. They talked about things the world wasn't ready to hear. One of those songs, he said, was called The Broken Pact. It talked exactly about that night, about the mask, the skull, the choice. But I never officially recorded it. I knew that if I did, it would be my end. Axl also mentioned that during those dark years, he thought about suicide more than once. Not because I wanted to die, but because I didn't know how to keep living with that weight. I felt trapped between two worlds, the one I left and the one I could never reach. But something always stopped him. I thought about the fans, about the people who wrote me letters saying my music had saved them. And I realized that if I gave up, I would be betraying them. Axl explained that over time, he learned to live with the pain. It didn't disappear, but I learned to carry it differently. I stopped seeing it as a curse and started seeing it as a test that I still had some humanity. He also started to completely distance himself from the industry. I stopped going to award shows, stopped seeking validation, because I realized that the validation I was looking for came from the same system that had destroyed me. And in that process, he found a kind of peace. It wasn't the life I imagined, but it was mine, and it was real. Axl said that for years he watched other artists go through the same thing he did. I saw young musicians arrive with all the energy in the world and in a few years be empty, and I knew exactly what had happened to them. Some contacted him privately. They asked me if what was rumored was true, if those meetings existed, and I told them the truth. But most didn't believe me. They thought it was paranoia from someone who was no longer at the top. That also hurt me, because I knew they were going to fall into the same trap and there was nothing I could do. Axl revealed that a few years ago, a young musician visited him. He told me he had been invited to a private meeting, that they had told him it was a unique opportunity. He asked me if he should go. Axl looked him in the eyes and told him, "If you go, you'll never be the same again." And not in a good way. The musician didn't go, and weeks later, his contract was canceled. He wrote to me saying I was right, that he had lost everything for not going. But he also thanked me, because at least he kept his soul. That conversation made me realize that speaking did help, even if it was to save just one person. Axl also spoke about how technology changed everything. Before it was easier to hide things, but now with social media, with leaks, with people speaking openly, the system started to crack. He said that in recent years, he saw how more and more artists began to talk about similar experiences. Not always in the same way, but with the same background. Control, manipulation, strange rituals. And I realized I was no longer alone, that the moment to speak had finally arrived. Axl explained that he decided to do it now because he feels it's his last opportunity. "I'm not young, I have nothing to lose, and if I don't say it now, I'll take it to my grave." He also said he does it for all those who couldn't speak, for those who died silent,